Hey guys, I'm Volin, and in today's video I'll be making a screenshot handler. Basically, it's going to be a node that you add to your scenes, which lets users take screenshots in an easy way. To make it more interesting, there will be a feature which helps to hide the UI inside of, well, basically the node information here, which will be hiding certain export variables in certain cases, but let's go over that later on. This all is part of my Godot Code Snippets bundle. So in the bundle, we have the data manager, GitHub workflows, audio spectrum, and this screenshot handler. And of course, it's also available for free for my Ko-fi supporters. Just as a quick mention, this bundle will keep growing over time with new code and new scripts and such. So the price will be going up. So get it whilst the price is cheap. But anyway, let's start with scripting. So we have our beautiful game with our character. We have everything here. But we want to create a node that we can add to any scene that we want to allow the person, like the user, to take screenshots from. First of all, let's create a new script. And let's call it screenshot handler. So inside of the script, what will we need to do? Well, let's first add a couple of comments. So we want the user to use an action. So in project settings, input map, we want them to create an action so, well, users can take screenshots with. So we want to do that. So we will also need to check if the action actually exists. And then we need to check if the correct action was pressed to know if we should take the screenshot or not. The file name should also be the exact moment that we took the screenshot on, so it's easy for the user to go to certain moments of when they took a screenshot. But for that, we should also make certain that the name is actually unique. If the name is not unique, we may overwrite the previous screenshots, which makes the user lose his screenshots. Well, at least part of them, which we don't want. So we need to make certain that the name is unique. Another nice to have is having a built-in option for hiding the UI for screenshots will be nice. For example, if you have our UI on the screen, sometimes it's overlaying certain parts. We want to be able to hide this, take the screenshot, and then show the UI again. So just so people actually have like a clean screenshot. So that will be nice to have, but that's up to the developer of implementing, but I will show you how you can implement something like this. So we can save an image in WebP, JPEG, and PNG. But they each have different options. For example, if I quickly create a function here and var image, it's an image.new, I can save to PNG, JPEG, EXR. We won't go over that one, and WebP. But for example, if I take WebP and I go into the settings, like in the arguments, one of the arguments is a path, of course, but then we also have lossy and quality. If you take PNG, for example, there's only paths. And if you take JPEG, there's quality. So these the quality and the lossy thing, I kind of want to hide them inside of, well, if I add a node, we will see this here. Like we will see all our export variables here. I want to hide the ones that we don't need when we have, for example, JPEG or PNG selected. So that's something we will also be implementing. And a nice to have will be an optional debug setting. Not necessarily, but it could be nice. Okay, so let's start with the action and the input handling. So first of all, I kind of want to give this script a name. So let's call this screenshot handler. And this will allow us, if we go into here and add a new node, we will be able to find our screenshot handler node. So we can add this to the scene, probably to the main branch. So just add this node to any scene that you want the user to be able to take screenshots from. So you probably won't add this to the startup menu, but to any game scene or just to the player character itself, you can add these nodes. So let's save this and let's go into project settings, input map. Now we need to define the action. How should we call this action? I think I will just call it, screenshot for now. Screenshot. And I will bind this to Control P. You can do whatever you want with this screenshot, but we need access to the screenshot. So let's create an export variable. Export var action, it's a string, and screenshot. So now if you go in here, you can add this node to any scene and you can change the action. You will need to make certain that it's, well, exactly the same word as here, the same action name. I don't think there's an export way of getting all the actions, but yeah, this works. Just be careful when you type in the name. Next up, we want to check. We want the user to use an action defined by the creator to take a screenshot with. So we need to check if the correct action was pressed. So let's do that part now. For this, we use the input function, which is a standard Godot function. So first we need to check if the action screenshot actually exists, because if you try to see if a screenshot was called and this action does not exist, then an error occurs. So, oops. If input map dot has action. Now this is one step. So we check if the action actually exists, but then we should also check if the action is pressed. So end event.is action pressed. And now let's just do a quick test. So print pressed. If you go into our project, we run it, Ctrl P, print pressed. Voila, we can stop this, it works. Let's hide the UI for now. Well, UI and color rect. Okay, and next up, let's write the code to take the actual screenshot with. So first of all, we also need a save path. So add export var, and we should probably make this into a directory, an export directory. So var save path, which is also a string, and let's put the default on user screenshots. Now, if you have not defined a custom project path in config, so we have use custom user there. If you select this and add something here, then it will save to a custom folder. If we hover over this, normally it should say we can get the directory from os.get user data directory. But on Linux, if we don't do anything, it will be under .local share Godot app user data and then the name of the project. In here, we will have to create a folder for the screenshots. So that's something we need to do next. So first, let's create our function. So let's call this save screenshots, which returns a void if their access dot there exists absolute, and we take our save path. Then, well, if it does not exist, we need to create the directory. So first of all, let's create a quick error. This is an int their access and make their recursive absolute. The recursive absolute is if you would have multiple paths in here, so screenshots, user, it will create all the folders. We only have this, but just in case you change it inside of the export variable here. If you change this to a certain folder, it won't cause any issues. So in here we add save paths, and that should be it. Now we have the error, so we need to check if the error actually occurred or not. And if an error occurs, we push an error. I push an error couldn't create folder at save paths, and then we also return the error so we actually know what went wrong. So the difference between push error and print error is that push error will also push it to the debugger here and here, which can be helpful, especially when you're debugging your project. To quickly test this, let's just print this here. Let's remove this print statement, change the error to like 1 by example. So if we run this and we press Ctrl P, we will see debugger 1 error, couldn't create folder at user. What you may notice is it prints an error here, but not in here. If you have the terminal running, like run the project through terminal, you will see the error also pop up there. Now I tend to use the push error approach recently because it's easier to see these things compared to an output which is full of all the debug things. In a normal project, if you have a lot of print statements, you easily start missing the errors. In here, you don't miss it. Also, just as a quick side thing, push warning also exists. Oops. And with this, exact same thing happens, but then it's just yellow, the warning. With this as well, you can click on it and it automatically goes to the line where the error is coming from, so the warning. Just a nice little feature that I discovered a couple weeks ago and been using in all my projects so far. But let's change this warning by the function save screenshot. So if the directory does not exist, we make the directory. Now the chance that something goes wrong in here, it is small. It is very, very small. Next up, we need to get the image. So the image that we need for saving. Let's create a new variable called image, which is an image. And for this, we basically get the viewport. And the viewport is basically the screen of your application. So if you get a viewport, get texture of the viewport. So we basically get the image itself. So get viewport gets the viewport node, and then get texture gets the texture of the viewport. And then we only need to get the image itself. This is basically an image that we could directly save or to memory or to our disk. For example, bit save WebP, save PNG, save JPEG. Next up, we will create basically the full path. So that's a string, and for this we create a new function get path. Let's quickly create this function. So func get path and void. So we don't really need to pass any arguments because we already have our main path. Inside of here we basically need to create the name of the picture itself. So that's the file name. And for this we basically do time.get date time and string from system. Now, if we just do this, let's quickly take this and put this in input. So let's have a print statement here. And if you run this quickly, it returns a void. We should return a string. Let's first do that. And let's return file name. So we get rid of that error. And now if you run, we will see the, now we will see the time. Something you may notice is there's a T here, and this symbol, it does not do very well in file name, so we basically need to replace these things. So for this, let's first remove the print statement. We need to replace the T and we need to replace the column. So we take our file name and we replace the T. Let's just replace it by an underscore. Let's copy this. And let's change the column to a minus. And now if we quickly print get path, let's make it into a function. Normally we should have a more readable, a better format for saving a file on a hard drive. So with this we basically get our path ready. Next up we need to create a new string, because one of the things that we need to do is make certain that the name is unique. So we need some kind of addition, and let's just make that, basically nothing for now. We need to check if a file already exists with that current name, and then we need to add like a number, like we add 1 or maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we just keep counting until it's a unique picture. Especially if people like, the file name is already like time, the hour, the minutes and the seconds, but if people take very quick screenshots after each other, within the same seconds, it will start overriding itself, and we don't want that. So that's why we need this addition. So let's keep this empty, and while file access, we need to check if the file already exists. So file exists. The full path will be path. And I see one big mistake that we made in here. We basically only return the name, not the full path. So let's quickly add save path plus file name. So this will be the actual correct path. So we check if the file exists, path plus addition plus webp. Also, I noticed another mistake. We should have a slash here. But basically, if the file exists, what we need to do is we take our addition and we make it equal to an underscore. Voila. And we take our addition, we convert it to int, ardo plus 1. So basically, if the file exists, we create addition, it becomes underscore, and then the number. You might think like converting a string to an integer, is that even possible? Well, let's have a quick test. So we have print, and we have our underscore, let's say 10 to int. Let's have another one just in case. And if we basically run this and go over it, you see it prints a normal number. So this will help us to create a, well, basically an actual like counter that gets added to the final part name. Okay, next up, when this all is done, the only thing that we need to do is we take our path and then we add our addition. And we also take our path and we add the extension. For now, let's do .webp. We'll soon add the other formats, but for now, let's just focus on webp. And then we take our image and we save webp to our paths. And let's create a variable for lossy and quality in the meantime whilst we're at it. So add exports. So we add an export range from 0.01 to 1, because if you look in our quality, we can see it's quality setting between 0.0 and 1.0. I choose 0.0.1 because fully 0, I don't think that makes any sense. Well, 0.01 also does not really make much sense, but it's something. Okay, but you can see this also returns an integer, so it also returns an error. So what I will do is var error int. Let's do this. Then we only need to do error here. And then with the image, we also say error. And if error, we also push an error. So const save image at, and let's just change this by path, and this should work. So if I were to run the project now, and I take my screenshot, it should have saved the screenshot inside of our screenshots folder, which just appeared, and we have our image, which, as you can see, we have. So yeah, this is a very, very basic way of being able to save, well, screenshots. But we have PNGs and JPEGs as well that we can use. So let's also implement this. For this, let's create on top a enum. We call it format. I add WebP, JPG, and PNG. We should also export this. So add export var format, which is from the format enum. And we set the default on WebP. You can set this to whatever you want. And because we set the default thing here on format, if we go in here, we can see it becomes a drop down of all the options. So we have our WebP, JPEG, PNG. Right now, if we, well, basically press any of this, quality and lossy are still available, even though JPEG and PNG don't use one of these or all of them. But that's something for later. Let's go into our save screenshot function and let's add our extension. So var extension, which is a string, and let's create a new function called get extension for this. Func get extension. It returns a string. And here we just create a new variable extension, which is a string. Let's make it empty to begin with. Let's return the extension and let's create a match statement which matches format. So we have our format WebP, we have our PNG, and we have our JPEG. And so in WebP we make our extension equal to .webp. For PNG this becomes PNG, and from JPEG this becomes JPEG. And then we just return the final extension. So instead of here adding WebP, we create this, we change this to extension, and inside of here as well, we change this to extension. So now if you choose one of these formats, it will be able to save under that picture, except for we still have save as WebP. So it, by default, no matter what we choose in here, it will always save as a WebP. So let's change that part. We can basically create another match statement. We call it format. We can just copy this. Can copy this, put this here. Copy this thing, copy this thing. So in here we change this to PNG. As we saw before, PNG only saves the paths. In here JPEG, this one also can use the quality. So we remove lossy and we only leave quality. And that's it. If there's an error, it will push an error here, and that's basically it. Now we can, if we change this to JPEG, for example, and we run the project, and we take a screenshot, it will save as a JPEG, which for some reason opens in GIMP on my system. So being able to change the different settings for each format, like make them visible, because PNG does not use these, JPEG does not use the lossy. We kind of want this to hide automatically. Well, it's more of like an editor feature, so more for you as a developer, not really for the people using it. But it might be a nice touch, and it's also kind of a nice feature to know in case you work on multiple nodes that you want to use in multiple different programs and have adjustable menus. So for this, one of the first things we need to do is we go to the top and we add the tool, the add tool line. This will make it update inside of the editor as well. Next up, under our format, we create a set function and we call this set format. And now let's just add this above screenshot. So func set format. This just creates a void. We do need a new format, which should be of the format variable. And basically we set format to the new format. And then we need to call a function to update all the properties in this list. To do this, we do notify property list changed. What this basically does is it's basically a signal that gets called, and then a function runs called, let's add this, func validate property. So basically all your export variables are basically properties. And with this, we can go over each property and change the property. If I go into here and we go into the properties, let's see. Okay, so we have our property uses editor and property uses no editor. So what no editor does is it will basically hide it, and what the editor does is it will show. So first of all, we have our quality property and our lossy property. So let's check if we are on those properties or not. So if property.name is equal to quality. And we also need to check if a lossy. So lossy. So for quality, if get, basically we need to get the format variable. So we do get format, so we get this variable. If this is equal to format.png, basically then we need to hide the quality property because PNG cannot set the quality. So we do property, so all the property data is inside of this dictionary, property.usage, which is basically, well, this whole property usage thing. And we set this to property usage no editor, and else we set it to usage editor. Now for the next function for lossy, basically only WebP uses it, so we basically can turn these around and we do this to WebP. So if I save this and I go inside of here, so I save it to WebP, I have my quality lossy this should have worked. Okay, let's quickly delete the script and let's add it again. So screenshot handler. So if I go to JPEG, okay, now it works. So I needed to refresh. So JPEG only has the quality, PNG has nothing, and WebP has our quality and lossy. I personally find this a very helpful feature. It's something very small, but I feel like it can have a big impact for developing and using your code in multiple projects. This thing, I only learned about it recently whilst making this video because I really found that this could be a nice addition for the screenshot handler. And I'm glad I found out how to do this properly. Okay, but now there was another thing. So we have our well, unique name. We can save an image in WebP, JPEG, PNG, and we are hiding different options. Next up, having a built-in option for hiding the UI. So we have our UI in screen, and we run our project and we take a picture. But the person is not very happy, the user is not very happy because the UI is blocking part of the image. Well, let's solve that by creating a new export variable. What we can do to make things a little bit more well, clean looking, because now if you go into here, everything is kind of towards each other. So let's say, let's call this part format variables, and let's create a new group called extras. In the group extras, let's add a new export variable, and we basically call this, let's call this hide nodes, which is going to be an array of nodes. So inside of a project, what we will probably need to do is probably delete it and add it again. Yep. So we have our format variables and our extras. Instead of here, we add a new element and we can just drag in our UI nodes. Right now, this won't really do much because we have not really made any of the code yet. So to actually hide the nodes inside of this array, to hide all these nodes, one thing that we will need to do is, well, probably create a new function, because it's just hiding, like looping through them all and doing it. We'll create extra code in here. So let's change this. Let's put this away and let's create a new function called take screenshots. Let's create this on the bottom. So func take screenshots, which returns an image. So in here we create a new variable called image, which is an image, and we set this to get a viewport, get texture, get image. So now something that we would want to do is basically we hide the UI and then we show it again after the screenshot. The only problem is sometimes some parts of the UI are already hidden, and if you were to just hide everything and then go through all the nodes in here and make them visible again, the nodes that were invisible to begin with, they will also become visible, and that's not really a desired approach. So we need to do a couple of things in here. So let's first create a new variable and we call it show nodes. Inside of here, we will basically put all the nodes which were visible to begin with. So invisible nodes, we won't really do anything with. So we loop through all the nodes for nodes of type nodes in hide nodes. If the nodes dot get visible, so we get the visible property of the nodes. If the node is visible, basically we append to show nodes with the nodes. Also, we need to set the nodes to invisible, so set visible to false. So this will basically give us an entire list of all the nodes which were visible to begin with, and it will also hide the nodes in the meantime. So after the nodes are hidden, then we basically need to take the screenshot. So let's remove this, put this here, and let's set this to image. So now we would have our image, except for there's one big problem with this approach, because these nodes are all going to be hidden or are hidden, but they may not be hidden already by the time you take this picture. Just to like have a better idea of like what I mean with this, if you set visible, code goes so fast and certain actions are being done later on in the code. So we basically need to add an await function. So we need to wait for our rendering server to have updated the visibility status of these nodes. If you don't, I'll show you later on, those UI elements will still be visible in the screenshot. So with this, we basically await until the frame post draw. Then we take our screenshot, and that's all we need to do. And then we need to set the nodes to visible again. So nodes, for nodes in show nodes, we can basically take this, put this here, set visible to true. And then we just return the image. If we start this now, we see function take screenshot is a coroutine. So it must be called with await. Because we have an await function in here, this is basically like, kind of like async or like in other languages. Basically, because of this await, if you don't await, this won't work properly. So we add await here, we run it again, now it works. Let's take a screenshot and you will see the UI flash for a second. And we have our screenshot. Let's also change it to JPEG so you can actually see the icon. So let's go in here, let's change this to JPEG. And let's change the code here. Let's just comment out this await function. So let's run. Let's print screen, and you may see the node probably got hidden, but again in GIMP. the node probably got hidden, but not at the exact same time as the picture was taken. So for this, we do need the frame post draw. You have another one, frame pre-draw, so before taking this, like before showing the next image. This also does not work. So yeah, we really need post draw to make certain that everything is updated properly. So again, if I take a screenshot, we have our screenshot without anything, and I clicked on it. Oh, no, okay, it does not open this time. And then, just for fun, let's add an export, an other export, because a nice to have would be an optional debug setting. So add export var debug, which is a bool, and let's set this to false by default. But inside of here, let's set this to on by default. And then in here you can add certain information. So if an error occurs, we push the error. Elif debug, we can add a print statement. Let's just print a message like screenshot saved successfully at. And voila. You could have other debug things in here, all up to you. I think a quick mention of the screenshot having been saved successfully is more than good enough. And that is basically it. We have our screenshot handler. We can add it to any game that we want. It's just a one script piece of code. We can add it as a node to our player character itself. So whenever the player character is visible, they can take a screenshot. I think this is more than good enough. Like probably the whole hiding of the export variables is a little bit too advanced. Most people probably won't need this. But as a developer who works on multiple games, this might be kind of a nice feature. Especially like a nice feature to know if you work on more advanced nodes that you reuse in different locations. So anyway, as usual, a big thank you to all my Ko-fi supporters. They make it possible for me to keep making these type of videos and tutorials. And yeah, thank you very, very much. Couldn't keep doing this without these amazing people. Also, these amazing people do have access to my Godot Code Snippets for free, but you can also download them on itch.io. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.